today we are going to be previewing the Los Angeles Rams for the 2025 season. Last year, the Rams went 10-7, winning the NFC West. They ended up beating the Vikings in the wild card and then losing to the Eagles in the division round. It was a close game, and they took the Super Bowl champs in a brutal weather game. They took them to the end. I think there's a lot of optimism for the Rams, bearing Matthew Stafford's health. But let's get into the preview for the Los Angeles Rams. So first, looking at the additions and losses. So they bring in their main switch, so to speak, is bringing in Davante Adams and having him replace Cooper Kupp. Now, Cooper Kupp has not been the healthiest recently for the Rams. Played 12 games this most recent season, then 12 the season before, and then 9 the year before. The last time he played 17 games was his 2021 Triple Crown season. But he hasn't played over 12 games in a season since then. So they get rid of their recently injury-riddled receiver, who is still good when healthy. Cooper Kupp is still a good receiver. But they bring in Davante Adams, who, while on the older side, I still think Adams is a very good receiver. And I think he has his fair share of missed times as well. But if him and Stafford can develop a connection like him and Kupp did, then I think this will be completely fine. I think it will be a very even move. I think Adams is better than Kupp, just based off the injuries that we've seen from Kupp recently. But they're both very good receivers. They just now bring in Davante Adams. And another receiver they lost was Demarcus Robinson. He's a fine receiver. I mean, he's actually a good receiver. Last year, he played every game, had 500 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's a good quality, receiver 3, receiver 4, whatever. But they let him walk. And another guy they brought in, Coleman Shelton. They bring him in at center, and they lose Jonah Jackson. I know he's a guard, but 2 linemen they do there. Shelton, he's a solid, steady veteran center. What you're going to get out of Coleman Shelton. It may not be the best, but he's also not going to be too inconsistent either. And then again at guard they lose Jonah Jackson, who he's a pretty good player. I would obviously take Jonah Jackson over Coleman Shelton. But again, center versus guard. But Coleman Shelton's not a bad pickup either. They bring in Poona Ford as well. I like Poona Ford. I think he's a very solid D tackle. They have a lot of good D linemen as a whole on this team, especially interior with Fisk and Kobe Turner, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I like Poona Ford as sort of that nose tackle type of D tackle next to those 2 DNs. So I think it's a good pickup there. And then they bring in Nate Landman, who he's honestly just okay to decent at best. He's good in the run, but his pass coverage can be a little not the best sometimes. So he's a fine pickup. They definitely need to keep getting linebackers because they are very weak at linebacker. They did lose Christian Rozeboom as they brought in Nate Landman. Rozeboom, he did have over 130 tackles last year, which is, you don't just stumble upon 130 tackles. And that was his first year as a starter, but overall he's just okay. I wouldn't look at his 130 tackle numbers and be like, oh, they lost a really good player. They lost a fine player. Him and Landman are probably very similar. Maybe Rozeboom has the slight edge over Landman, but it really isn't by that much. And then some other guys they lose. They lose edge rusher Michael Howitt. I think that's how you say his name. And then interior D lineman Bobby Brown. Howitt, he was honestly pretty solid in his last 2 years on the Rams. And if their depth and talent at, again, the D-line position, edge rusher position, wasn't as good, I would be kind of upset at losing him. But they have so much talent there that I think they can recover from losing Michael Howitt. And then Bobby Brown, he's a good run defending nose tackle. He can really take up space. So now him and Poona Ford, again, another similar type of. They didn't really make any upgrades or downgrades. A lot of lateral moves. Landman to Rozeboom, Poona Ford to Bobby Brown, Davante Adams to Cooper Kupp. The only thing that really hurt them, I guess, was losing Jonah Jackson and Michael Howitt. But again, I don't think Michael Howitt hurt him as bad as we think, just because of the talent they have on that D-line. Now, looking at the offense for the Rams. So first, I think the glaring thing about this team is the quarterback. Not that they have a lack of talent, but we don't know about Stafford's health. Now, good thing is they have Jimmy Garoppolo as their backup, and he's a fine backup. He also has a little bit of chemistry with Davante Adams, regardless of how it went in Las Vegas, they have played together. So he's a fine veteran quarterback that you can play in a very good offense, which they have, and just have him run the offense for like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever you need for Stafford to come back if he's not fully healthy at the start of the season. Now, again, Jimmy Garoppolo, if he has to play, I mean, this even is the case for Stafford too, but if Jimmy G has to play, they have a good team around him. First, the O-line. It's a very good O-line. Last year, they were 6th fewest in sacks. They allowed the 6th fewest sacks. You have... Now, he's on the bench, but Bo Limmer. I really like Bo Limmer. He's a pretty good second-year player who's developing. You liked what you saw out of his rookie year as a 6th-round pick. As we mentioned before, Coleman Shelton, they brought him in from the Bears. He's just like a solid, steady veteran guard center. You know what you're going to get from him. Kevin Dotson, and Alaric Jackson. Now, Alaric Jackson, who knows if he's going to be healthy to start the season, but Alaric Jackson, Kevin Dotson, and also Rob Havenstein are all three pretty good linemen. You like what you got out of them. Again, Alaric might miss some time. He has like this blood clot thing going on. But if he does have to miss time, they bring in DJ Humphries from Kansas City, which honestly didn't have the best year with Kansas City, but I still think he can be a decent plug-and-play veteran if they need to. And then you also got Steve Avila, who he's just okay, but again, he's a second-year player, second-round pick. So it was a good O-line last year, not too much change, and I think it should be a solid O-line again this upcoming season. Now, at running back, you know what you got out of Kyren Williams. He was very good last year. Almost 1,300 yards. He missed it by a yard. He had 14 touchdowns. He also had 2 touchdowns in the air as well. So you really like Kyren Williams as your number one guy. They just paid him this offseason. You also got Blake Corum, who is now entering his second year, 3rd-round pick out of Michigan as your backup. Didn't get too much opportunities last year. Only 58 carries, where Kyren had over 300. So a big disparity in the carries that we saw between these two running backs. But Corum obviously was unbelievable at Michigan, and I think he still could be a very good running back in the NFL. And I think him and Kyren can be a very nice duo in that backfield. At the tight end room, you got Tyler Higbee, who is a fine. He was a little banged up, a lot banged up last year. Only played 3 games, but when he plays, he's a solid tight end. Like, you can rely on Tyler Higbee. May not be one of the top guys, but you can rely on him to just get open and catch the ball. And they also got Colby Parkinson on the bench, who had to fill in a little bit for when Higbee wasn't playing. And he had 300 yards and a touchdown on 50 targets, so not the worst for Colby Parkinson. And you also got Terrence Ferguson, who you took out of the 2nd round in this draft. It's a solid tight end room. All you really need is a healthy Tyler Higbee, and you got good depth behind him, and it's an overall solid group. And then at receiver, again, Davante Adams, you bring him in, and out goes Cooper Kupp. Very similar, in my opinion, when they're both playing. I would obviously lean Davante Adams a little bit, but it's not by much. Good player nonetheless. You obviously have Puka Nacua. We all know how good Puka Nacua is. Another guy who missed some time last year, only played 11 games. But in those 11 games, he had 900, almost 1,000 yards and 3 touchdowns. But when Nacua was healthy, we know how good Puka Nacua is. You have Tutu Atwell as your slot guy, who is a pretty good. I like Tutu Atwell as your slot. And then another guy who I like is Jordan Whittington, their 6th-round pick in this most recent draft. Now, he's only 24 years old. Didn't get a ton of opportunities last year. Only had 28 targets. However, he had 0 drops on those 28 targets. Again, small sample size. But on 28 targets, 0 drops, he might be able to be a very reliable 4th receiver here, especially if guys like Davante Adams miss time. Even Puka Nacua might miss some time. So to have a guy like Jordan Whittington entering his 2nd year is now, I would assume, like the 4th best receiver on this team, especially without Demarcus Robinson. I think he can have himself a pretty decent year, too, in a much bigger role. And then they also got Konota Mumfield, who had a solid career at Pitt. Took him out of the 7th round, so don't know how much he's going to get. He is, on this depth chart, their 5th guy, it looks like, or 4th. outside receiver, so we'll see what kind of role he can have. But again, overall, it's a very good offense. And if Jimmy G has to play some games, I think he can get it done and not necessarily lose them many games. He may not win them, but I don't think he'll lose them either. Now, the best part of this team, I think, is the defense. Last year, their defense was 17th in points allowed compared to their offense, which was 20th. But I do, again, really like this defense. And I think it starts with the D-line and the youth of this D-line as well. Braden Fisk, drafted in 2024. Kobe Turner, Byron Young, both drafted in 2023. Jared Verse was drafted in 2024. And then we can just talk about how good these guys are. Byron Young is one of their outside linebacker edge rushers. He's a very good young edge rusher. Had 9 sacks last year. Very similar to his rookie year, so we'll see if he can break out even more. He has had very similar first 2 years to his career, but if he can have a really good year 3, that's a really good season and player. Jared Verse on the other side is already, after his rookie year, one of the better edge rushers in the league. Gets pressure on the quarterback, gets sacks. Made the Pro Bowl last year as a rookie, probably already the best player on this Rams D-line. You got Poona Ford, as we mentioned before, very solid run defending nose tackle. You got Kobe Turner, who's a very good pass rusher. Only 2 years in his career, and in those 2 seasons, he's already got 17 sacks and also can get very good pressure and pretty solid in the run game as well. And then you got Braden Fisk, their second-round pick from last year. Now, he's also more of a pass rusher, similar to Kobe Turner. But he's, again, only 1 year in, and as a rookie, he had 8.5 sacks and was like top 10 in a ton of key advanced stats like pressures and hurries. In the league, top 10, not just rookies. So it's a very good young D-line. And then going to the linebackers, we mentioned Nate Landman is just like a solid player, solid to decent, or okay to decent. But outside of him, or next to him, you got Omar Speights, who I really like. He's only 24 years old because he was an undrafted free agent in 2024. I think he was an undrafted free agent. Very secure tackler for a rookie. Pretty decent in coverage. Not the best, but I think that'll just get better. And despite a small role in his rookie season, he got over 60 tackles, and now he gets to be one of the 2 starting off-ball linebackers for this team. And then another guy I didn't mention on the D-line, Ty Hamilton, their 5th-round pick from Ohio State, had 3.5 sacks at the nose tackle position, or the D-tackle position. So I think he can give himself, because he's competing for Poona Ford's spot. I like Poona Ford, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ty Hamilton gets some playing time this season and makes a little bit of an impact for a 5th-round pick. And then another one of the 2 of the other linebackers, you got Chris Paul, another one of their 5th-round picks. They got him at Ole Miss. Had a pretty good year at Ole Miss. Very smart, instinctual linebacker. And then Troy Reeder, he's been on the team for a little bit. He's just an okay veteran, but a solid backup. I think him and Nate Landman can be constant, steady backups and depth guys, while Omar Speights and Chris Paul hopefully develop as they're still early in their career. And then also looking at the defensive backs, not as strong of a group as their front 7, or at least their D-line, but you do have some good pieces in the secondary. You got Cam Curl, who had an okay first year in LA because he started off in Washington, I'm pretty sure. He had an okay year in LA, but in 2023, when he was on Washington still, he had his best year of his career, had over 100 tackles, was good in the run, was good in the pass, and now he gets to be in year 2 in this Rams system. So I think he'll have an even better year than he did his first year with the Rams. And then next to him, you have Cameron Kinchens, who in his rookie year, last year at their 3rd-round pick, he played less than 50% of the snaps. So he didn't play a ton in his rookie year, but he had 4 interceptions. He had over 50 tackles. He was good in the run, good in pass, and he showed a lot of big play ability of flying towards the ball, taking the ball away. So I think he'll have a very good year too. And then their corners, you got Darius Williams, who didn't have the best year last year, but he was hurt. And when he was fully healthy in 2023, he had a pretty good year. So I think if he can get back to being healthy, he'll have another good year. You got Ahkello Witherspoon as your other boundary corner, another guy that when healthy, he's pretty solid in the run and in the pass, but just hasn't shown to be the healthiest. Quentin Lake, it was his first year last year as a starting safety, and now he might be the nickel. I'm still not sure if he's like a nickel or safety, but again, he can play both. He's only 26. And then some of their backups here, I really like Jalen McCulloch, their undrafted free agent last year, because he didn't play a ton, and only one start and under 30% of the snaps, he had 4 interceptions, which is pretty good, and he was overall pretty good in coverage. So despite a minimum role, he still managed to get 4 interceptions as a backup safety. And so maybe he can take Cam Curl's spot as that starting strong safety. And then Kobe Durant probably had a career year last year in terms of like coverage and overall stats. And he's only 27. He's pretty good depth. Like if he's your third best boundary corner or whatever, that's pretty good. Now, they also have Emmanuel Forbes, who's definitely had an up and down start to his career so far. So we'll see what he can do. I think he's been here. I think he might have got traded to the Rams in like the deadline or something last year. I'm not fully sure, but they have him now for a full season, so we'll see if they can get something out of him. But overall, it was a pretty solid defense last year, and I think it will get better because of just how many young pieces they have. And if these young players continue to develop, which I think they will, the defense will continue to get better. Quickly looking at the special teams before we move on to their schedule. Josh Carty, as their kicker, had a pretty decent rookie year, and he should improve on that. Ethan Evans is a good punter. I'm not too sure about Xavier Smith as their punt returner and what kind of element he can bring, but I think Jordan Whittington, on top of what I talked about earlier, how I think he could have a pretty good year too, he's also a pretty solid kick returner too. And I think Blake Corum has played a little bit at kick returner for them last year, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's pretty solid, overall solid special team room. Now, looking at the schedule. So, again, they play their division twice, which is tough because it's a tough division. They also play the AFC South. They play the NFC South. And then their division placement schedule features it looks like the Ravens, because they won the division last year. The Ravens, the Eagles, and the Lions. So that's their first place teams. So overall, tough schedule. They're the 17th hardest schedule in the league based on win percentage last year. I think their floor, I think they can have a pretty decent floor because, again, although Jimmy G might have to play some games, I think he can play well enough where they can squeak out some wins against maybe Houston and maybe Tennessee. It might be tough to beat Philly with Jimmy G, but I think they can take down Tennessee, and maybe even if Jimmy G has to play the Colts, I think they can get that win. And then when Stafford comes back and they start to play more tough teams more consistently, especially more division opponents, I think they can get some wins. So I'm going to have their floor because I don't know about Stafford. I'm going to have their floor at 7-10. But if Jimmy G doesn't have to play that much because Stafford's healthier than maybe we think, or just overall healthy, or Jimmy G plays well and wins games, I could see this team getting a lot of wins. I think their ceiling could be very high. And I'm actually going to have their ceiling at 13-4. I mean, they only won 10 games last year, or they won 10 games last year. So I don't think a 3-win improvement is crazy. Again, this is their ceiling. I don't think they will get 13 wins, but I think if everything goes to plan, they can get 13 wins. And that leaves my prediction up to 10-7. Same as last year again. The question mark of the quarterback is probably why I don't have my final prediction being any better, even though I think the overall team will be better. Because again, while Jimmy G is a solid veteran quarterback, he's no Matthew Stafford. So we'll see about that whole question there. But I do think it'll be a pretty successful season for the Rams. Once again, they're always going to be a competitive team. They're always going to fight for playoff spots, and I think they can go on a run as well. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. If you're new, subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.